And God was all over me, like all over me. And I'm like,
Interesting.
yes, thank you. But we're two times, I can think of three times, many times over many years that we've worked together, but three profound times. One, through the power of possibility. I don't know which module, but we went like deep in I went deeper into that quieted mind realm, right? And had like a mind bending experience, like psychedelic, crazy energy, right? Came out of that, and we were both like, whoa. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened there, but I want more of that. And then the very first time, and that was when me and you were like still saying universal energy. There is there is something that's controlling the universe that's high energy that we can interact with, not labeling it as God, neither one of us. Then you started to infrequently drop God as the source.
Dropping
And
the
I
G.
was like, yeah, I don't know, Co. Like, what do you maybe? Like, why are you changing your tune? And then we went to Wake Up Warrior, and that guy on like third day or second day that Garrett brought that was like, hey, every morning I burn down my relationship with God and rebuild it. And he walked us through that experience, right? Now, Garrett had said on day one, what's the biggest lie you're living with or you're telling yourself? And instantly I knew it was, well, there isn't a God. Like, I mean, I'm talking like as soon as like Garrett didn't even finish like you're telling yourself, and I was like, oh, that there isn't a God, right? And so we worked for 2 days on eradicating or fucking coming super true with not living any lies, but definitely not the biggest lie you're telling yourself. And that is when I walked through that process and when I was deep in meditation and I like thought someone had come in my house and was squeezing my hands, right? Like there's somebody fucking in my house being like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you know, and I came out of that and I was like, fuck, there's nobody here. Fuck, that was God. Like, I mean, I get chills right now, right? Like that experience was so insane. And like when I went to church that Sunday, like that's Friday. So Sunday, you know, I tell my buddy Mark, he's like, hey, how was your week? And I was like, fuck, it was insane. And he's like, it looks like it was insane. Like your eyes are like fucking glowing. And I'm like, oh, really? He's like, dude, you look different. And I said, well, I mean, God touched me on Friday. And he was like, what? Like this guy's, whatever, 30-year. And so I tell him this experience and he's like, come here, come here, come here. Takes me to Dave, the head pastor. He's like I'm a little some kind of circus guy.
Show and
And
tell.
yeah, show and tell. And he brings me to Dave and he's like halfway through telling Dave and he's like, yeah, I know God touched Jason. I can see it. He's like the only person I've ever seen that look in is this dude who goes to our church who like has tons of PTSD from combat.
Hmm.
And he started going to South America to do ayahuasca, right?
Hmm.
And he experienced God in this capacity and came back and was like, but now he went down that slippery slope of like chasing the dragon because he can't get back there without ayahuasca, right? But he's
Uh,
like, that look in Jason's eye, that fucking undeniable thing, is bar none, he experienced God. So, and I was, yeah, I didn't feel any, I was like, why me? Like, why the fuck did God touch my hand? Like, what, like, of all the people on earth, like, why are you coming here? Like, to me, like, what am, and I struggled with that, right? Like, I struggled with, like, what was that? And I think there was a lot there, right? For sure. Still living that out and fleshing it out. But the second most mind bending experience was, 2.5 years of totally working deep with you to not be outward like control focused, like outcome based, like total surrender, right? Like complete fucking like to levels of surrender that I don't even, people couldn't even digest, like that I needed to go to, right? In like, was doing good. Like, was God was showed up. I can't even count how many times across me and the girls during that time.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, just where I'm like, no way, not doubting God, but doubting the feasibility of what was in front of us. And then boom, like fucking undeniable, like God, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, wow, this is something on to staying centered, fully surrendered, trusting, being grateful, all the fucking frequencies. And then right before the showtime for myself, right, of being like, hey, this needs to be on point and being like, yeah, really nervous and uh, not outcome based, but like not where I had been, right? And I sat right here and we connected. And that's when, I mean, full blown, not like physically, metaphysically, fucking energetically, like whatever you want to say, all of it. God picked me up and was like, dude, that's not you. Like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And fucking moved me to where this place, right? Was just like and I mean, that was mind bending. I mean, for sure. Like, I still, I mean, I don't know. Like, that was insane. But it's only through, and I was like, yes, thank you, God, like all the time, like for many things. And it's fun. Like, I don't even know how I would really react outside of maybe just chuckle on like agnostics, right? Because like I have physically experienced this, not just those times. Like I can cultivate the presence of God very fast. And this isn't like some fucking made up thing in my mind. This is like in my hands, like
Yeah.
on my body,
Well,
right? Like,
you mentioned agnostics and, we could say atheists as well. And, people make their paradigms, their belief systems based around their experience, right? So if someone's never experienced God or had some sort of spiritual experience, they have no reference point directly for the truth of it. So they either have to believe in it or they disbelieve in it. But either way, that's a belief. It's not an experience. It's a belief that's based around their experience, which is like, well, I've never experienced, like me with ghosts in the past, right? It's like, I don't know if ghosts are real or not. I've never experienced them. So I'm agnostic when it comes to ghosts, right? I'm open to the possibility, but at the same time, I have no direct experience. I think this is the intelligent position. personally. Of course, I'm tooting my own horn there, but of course, I think my position is the intelligent one. But no, I mean, it makes sense, right? You should form your beliefs based around your experience. And for some people, the experience is just, well, they experienced growing up in a religious household, or they experienced, guilt. If you don't think this way, you don't believe this way, you don't do these things, then you're going to have bad things happen. So that was their experience that shaped their belief. With you, you had no experience directly. And so you had a disbelief in the reality of God. So what changed and how did that change come about? It seems that at least at some point you have to have some skepticism about your disbelief.
Yeah, I mean, it came through, I mean, bar none, my skepticism came from my skepticism that it doesn't, that there is a God, came from meditation. Not like, I don't even think our kind of meditation, right? So like, not like the Calm app or any of these things, right? Like none of that.
Embodiment practices and
Yeah, so I know exactly where it came from. Thinking about it, because like I had never sunken my consciousness into my body. That wasn't a thing. Like nobody until I met you, and like we spent a year of just what, like how, like doing that.
yeah, the mechanism and the
The
process.
yes, like working through like even experiencing it, because at the beginning I wasn't skeptical of you, but like I had no idea what that would be or how that would feel, or even like could I even do it. But once you start doing it,
Did I ever try to convince you about God?
we never, this is our first real conversation ever about God, right? Like outside of like us saying like coming out of experiences and being like, well, that was definitely God. No, we didn't.
Yeah, I didn't attack your beliefs and try to break them down and show you how they're wrong or based on false or misinformation. I didn't do any of that shit, right? No, we just did the practices and we did them with as much genuine honesty and sincerity that we could muster. Just do the practices. And this is like what's very difficult for people because, well, why should I do these practices? Where are they going to lead me to? It's like, well, you don't know. You kind of just have to have some faith in your teacher or in the teaching or in the practice. And you kind of just have to do it for a little while. And then realizations occur because you're orienting your consciousness in a new way. So, just in the same way you're talking about, most people are living completely through the filter of a mind made self that's thought based.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? Well, let me tell you. This is my name. This is my date of birth. Here's all the facts. Here's all the memories. Here's what my beliefs are. Here's, what I'm trying to do with my life, et cetera, et cetera. But all that is just content. Who are you? Right. And so we can't get the answer in thought. And so if most people are stuck in this level of mind that's has thought as its basis, then all they can do is try to change the story, to change their beliefs. But that's just putting a different filter on their experience.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do with meditation is remove the filters and actually get our awareness unstuck and unhooked from only being identified with thought and to be able to drop down into the body and experience a deeper level of mind. Now, this is interesting. I was listening to a neurobiologist this morning, and he was talking about how people just talk about the brain as the stuff in your head, the neurons and the glial cells, but actually, your brain consists of three parts. We have a gut brain, the same type of neurons and glials. We have a heart brain, and actually, these two are primary, and this one is tertiary. The the head brain is last in line, but because it has the capacity to think and in language, then as it starts to take over and become primary, we lose the capacity to access these deeper levels of mind consciously. And so for me, it was like 14, 15, 16 years old. I'm like, I'm fucking stuck in my head. What the hell? I wasn't stuck in my head like years ago, but I'm definitely stuck in my head now. I don't really remember what it was like to not be stuck in my head. All I can know for sure, it wasn't this.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and most people probably don't even, they don't go this far in their exploration of self. But it's like, well, if there was a time when I wasn't stuck in my head, but I'm stuck in my head now, well, then there was a process that got me here. So there's probably a process that can get me out of here, out of the prison of the mind. Because that's what it is. When we are unable to access other levels of mind, we are in a prison. We live in the prison of our own making. And the only way that we can try to get freedom is by moving the pieces of furniture around in the prison, which is basically just trying to change our thoughts or control our thoughts. But we're still in our thoughts. So it's not freedom. Freedom is getting out of the mind, accessing a deeper level of consciousness, and then orienting our identity to this more primary aliveness, the life force that enlivens and illuminates the mind.
Yes. I mean, yeah, like that's exactly what I did here.
And
Right.
so for your friend that was doing the ayahuasca, right? And he had those experiences where he got out of his head. He opened his heart, probably, maybe he had visions, maybe he had, some completely overwhelming experience that reoriented his beliefs. But now, because he doesn't know how to get back to that space without utilizing some exogenous substance, mhm, then, he's kind of stuck.
Well, yeah, that's, I mean, we've talked about like the short circuit, right? So like that's not the way because that might make you believe something, right? Or experience something. Awesome. That's the first, it's the very first awakening, but it's not then and then it's golden, right? This is something that's nurtured and worked on
Mhm.
daily,
Cultivated. And how?
cultivated.
What
And
are the methods?
if you if you need something like you can't cultivate it like what we just did, like every day, did not like that's what I was saying. Like I can cultivate I can get back to those mind-bending awakening moments like more and more faster and faster just because I know how to sync and connect and
So what are the
open.
methods? What are the methods to God realization aside from psychedelics, let's say?
Well, I don't know any of that, right? So like uh surrender, release, constriction, all of that needs to be turned over to surrender, right? So like
So yeah. So letting go, basically. Surrender is
100%
letting
letting
go
go.
of control.
Like in
Uh,
like not like being like, oh, I let that go, right? Like doing the work to let go.
Yeah, it's like, fine, I'm just gonna let that go.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
about my day.
That doesn't fucking bother me anymore. It's like, well, that's funny because like your whole body language would say it still does. So yeah, letting go. And honestly, if we were to go back 4 years or fuck however long, I didn't realize the first thing to bring me to God would be our first releasing call ever. Right? Like that I was doing something not related to any of this cultivation work, right? Just getting getting out of my mind though, right? Was and so releasing 100%.
Well, yeah. So if I remember correctly, the point you're talking about is when you began to question this sort of way, this modality of being where you were trying to control your ex. You were trying to control her. I pointed that out on our first call. And you were like, no, I'm not. But then as you began to think about it and feel it, you're like, oh shit, no, I actually am shit. So letting go of control was the opening, the initial opening.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, it's just really that constantly. I mean, from there, other like what else, like where else in your body are you holding things, right? So releasing like many, many hundreds of hours. Then from a more open body, right? Least less constricted, starting to try to sink the conscious, your mind down.
Hmm.
I mean, a year of that,
Dropping in.
like, right? Dropping in and then really realizing, oh, this is this is where you are supposed to reside, right? Like living from a heart center.
This is home.
This feels this feels incredible.
Hmm.
And then it's not like you just stay there. So you have to constantly be doing work, right? To get back into abide in that space more and more and more and more.
So what Locke Kelly says is it's a developmental stage.
Mm.
And it's a developmental stage that unfortunately most human beings haven't begun yet because the first move is get out of the head. That's the very first move, unhook. And most people can't do that. So the developmental stage is unhook from the identity that we've created in our minds about who we are and the limited individual we take ourselves to be. Not that we need to get rid of it or destroy it or kill the ego. We just need to get unhooked from it. So it's not all consuming. This is who I am. So unhook and start to develop the capacity to drop inside or initially to discover consciousness as an awake presence that is prior to thought, that's not dependent on thought. So we start to sense directly that thought happens as an after effect of this conscious awareness that I am, that's actually more intrinsic and essentially who I am. It's like, oh, I'm this, and I have all these thoughts, and I have beliefs, and I have an ego, and I have a identity in my head, and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the all of me. Actually, this is more essential. And so that's the first move is we could say unhook. Second move is discovering awake consciousness that exists prior to thought, that's not dependent on thought. Then or actually, maybe that's the third move. And in lock system, that would be the third move. The second move would be discovering the subtle mind, which is more like the flow state. Like when we're doing things that we love, we're not stuck in our heads. We do get a reprieve when we are riding our bikes or, playing at the beach with our kids or whatever. If it takes us out of the head and into the experience, then that's subtle mind and body. Then from there, we can discover this awake consciousness prior to thought. And then from there, we begin to bring it back inside into the heart, begin to embody this consciousness. And then the last move is to learn how to do and act and relate and respond to life from here instead of from here. So those are the 5 levels of mind that Locke Kelly talks about. I think it's an incredible map. And it just points to that initial statement, which is it's a developmental stage, it's a process, and it's worth making the journey. It's the most valuable thing to discover in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely grateful.
As am I.